Okay, my friends, this was going to be about all of these crazy creatures that Pliny the Elder documented as the Romans went through India and Asia and everywhere and conquered all these places. They recorded and documented in meticulous detail what they found there, the different animals, how they lived, how they ate, what the people thought about them, how they interacted with the locals. What were these crazy creatures? And I mean, I'm talking crazy. I thought I saw some crazy stuff. Yikes. You know, people with, bodies of dogs and heads of people and just insane stuff. Like, people with the coils on their legs that would wrap around elephants and strangle them. And I mean, it's so bizarre. It's unbelievable. So I was going to go through that just to see what he had to say, because any unicorns, and because I'm telling you, look, dog-headed people, he documented this pretty clearly, that's what these people would say. And he'd say how many were living in this area and the region they were living in. He had them all on the maps, and then of course he had all the other things too, giraffes and elephants and hippopotamuses and all the things that they hadn't seen before, crocodiles, whatever he found, he documented it. So it ended up, I decided to move into because also he covered stones and minerals and all that. So I'm going to start by going into the minerals and so forth, which leads us into this. It's still going to be very interesting, I hope. Not quite the shocker du jour that this would be, but it's still pretty shocking when you're going to see some of the stuff I show you. All right, so that's how we're going to start out. I'm going to be talking about his work, but not, because he's worked in every single field, just like I do. He did biology, anatomy, physics, everything. Fossils, he did all that stuff. And he did it, wrote a big history of it. So we're going to start with his mineral assessment of what the earth is made of and all these different things that he found all in the areas that they went into. Okay, my friends, this is going to be exciting. I was originally going to do Pliny the Elder on his natural histories. He was a Roman. He wrote all of their conquests and what they found when they went throughout the world, basically, the known world at that time. And they had all kinds of crazy creatures. But he also wrote on every single thing there was: biology, anatomy, minerals. And this is what I found most interesting after I started into this. So we're going to do the animals, but we're not going to do that today. This is what I found extremely interesting, was this right here. Was where he is talking about minerals. He's going into minerals and gems and precious stones and all this stuff. He's saying Pliny described many other minerals, including, and they come down through all these different things, how the smell of them and what they exuded out and what they looked like. And here's one. He says, Nazanaminisk, a blood red stone with black veins. And I have that. It's in all of them. I mean, well, not in all of them, but in hearts and stuff, where you have blood red, and then you have the black veins and stuff. And I think I'll be showing this in a microscope. I got a little out of order on this because I had originally decided I was going to do the creatures. But then as I started to see the stones, I said, let's go that way. And then I'll do a different one on the creatures, because it just fell that way. Let's put it that way. So stick around, and if this makes sense, if you want to know how these stones create these different types of, like they said, oh, it's just metamorphic and igneous and sedimentary. No. They're all body parts, and they turn hard in different conditions. It's the conditions, and I will show you the conditions and how they actually turn into these colored stones. And look at this, opals, and I'll be going through all this stuff. But look at this black opal. How did that happen? What would cause that? I know exactly what caused it. And what would cause a heart to turn into a heart like that, which happens to be opal? And remember that last one I saw you, that black opal? That's where it came from, out of a heart. And I'm going to show you all this stuff in great detail. That's a heart, exactly like what you just saw, only with the transition metals invaded it and took over all the heartstrings and the ventricle walls and tubing and all that stuff. So this is what we're going to stick on. Now, they're going to get a little confusing for the first 10 minutes or so, 5 minutes, but stick with me and it'll make all sense to you by the time we get done. And again, we're talking about these transition metals. This is the key. Once you understand this, a lot of stuff falls into place about geology. Okay, my friends, I am going to freehand this, but you can see the red and the black and the quartz filling in where there was voids. Now, I believe this was a heart. This goes way back to the beginning. I was just cutting up rocks and looking inside them and see what was in there. Like I said, I'm freehanding this. Now, this goes to Pliny, who, you see this? See that black vein running through there? There's veins, there's arteries, there's all that red blood. I mean, see it? Another little vein. Now, Pliny talked about this kind of rock that we're going to go through Pliny, but he talked about all these different minerals, and this is right inside of just this particular, I believe it's a heart, and all of these different metals and minerals and all these things are in here because blood carries all that stuff through the body. And he was just examining all the different colored rocks and saying that it would exude different stuff because they're organs. They're organs that they secrete things. Here's another one that goes way back to the beginning. I'm not sure whether this is a heart or a liver, or it's certainly not a lung, but it's got to be either a heart or a liver, and I think it's a part of a heart. This is a heart. That's the aorta right there. There's a little taste of blood left in there. That's it. That's the ventral wall right there. That's what the heart is. And they break off normally right across. This is a seam right across there. I don't know if you can pick it up on this one. Right across, well, it's right there. And if you crack it just right, all of that plumbing from the top comes right off. But this one, it goes completely washed out, so you don't have that separation zone where you have the red and the black blood. The two tubes run right together, the red and the black, and they push each other apart. So normally you get a heart that's just like this, from here down, because all that popped right off. And it'll break right off just as straight as can be. It'll come right off. Very easily, too. Just tap it. I had one guy did it, and there's blood right in the side of it. I'll show it to you because, well, let me show it to you. Now this is going to work out perfect because this is a heart. All this is heart. And that's where the valves are, right there. They go down into the buckets. Up above is the plumbing. And right across here, there's a seam. And if you just tap it correctly in the mudfossils, they'll just open up. Even the people that do the autopsies have told me that they separate easily from the bottom part of the heart and the plumbing above, which you can see. That is a heart. There it is right there. Same thing. And there's that one there. This is Bennu. They went up and they actually brought the samples back to Earth, and the samples are muscle. It's actual sarcomeres of muscle and membranes, and they should be able to understand that. They've had it here for a year, and they're going to be researching it forever. Well, it's a heart. There's no question about it. Very, very simple to prove. No question whatsoever within 48 hours. Now, that's Bennu, which is a heart. That's Psyche, which is a heart. That's smelted because it got too close to the sun or whatever, and it heated it up to a certain temperature. Got to be about 2,700 degrees, somewhere around there, to smelt. So, and they're normally not going to be that hot. Like Bennu, it never smelted, so it hasn't been close to the sun. Now, as I said, they separate right here, and I can prove that, and because of a friend of mine, Phil Harris, found one. On a 15-minute challenge, he went out and found a heart, tapped it, opened up, and it still had blood in it. What did I show you? I'm serious. He found these right there in the bottom part of the bucket of blood. And then up above, you can see all of the tubing coming up. I'll show you right now. All right, it's just incredible. I put out the 15-minute challenge. I said, anybody go out and find a mud fossil in 15 minutes. Phil Harris went out, he found this rock, and it was a full-size rock. And he saw that red spot. And he whacked it with a hammer. I think he whacked it right there. And it just fell apart. And the top has the plumbing, and the bottom has the blood. There's the red, there's the black, and there's the plasma. So what he did, he came up, and literally, this is almost identical to what he would have seen, is this red spot right here. All right? The aorta and all the plumbing is up here, but he saw that red spot, basically right there. He smacked basically right here, and along that line right there, the whole top came off. And what does the top look like? When you look up, we're looking down into the buckets now. That's where the buckets of blood are. And if you look up, you can see the tubing that ran out of it. And there's the tubing right there. So the bucket was down here. He saw that red spot, which is over here, pop, and it just separated. And now, this is all already sort of oxidated, even though, because it's trying to be pressed apart. The black tries to push the red away. That's why it separates right flat as a pancake. And that's because of the oxidation states. It's called iron banding. And so this is the plumbing at the top, and the buckets of blood are at the bottom. And the blood is just still completely saturated red blood. And again, they try to push each other apart. That's why, and just open right up. This is why they just separate. This is where he smacked her, somewhere in this area. Now you see the red and the blue? That means the artery and the vein. The artery has a different type of polarity to it, and it literally pushes the black blood away. It's black after it. In the mud fossils, it's black. So you're red and black, and they just push each other apart. He tapped it here, and it popped right off the top. All right, there's another consideration to take into account. Phil's heart was straight up and down when it was in the ground. So it was straight up and down. This heart, was laying this way. So the iron banding forced it apart in layers, one right after the other. You see all the different layers? There'll be a layer of red, a layer of black. It's called iron banding. That's what it is. And they really don't understand it, but I do. It's because of this push to shove, push to shove, push to shove. Now, if laying this way, you got your red and you got your black, because it's just going to pool like that. If it was this way, it would have been separate. It would have smacked off the top. The plumbing up in here would have just popped right off at a certain level. So that's iron banding, and that's why Phil's heart cracked the way it did. There's the buckets at the bottom. Now it had to be sitting straight down like this. In my mind, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And the tubing up at the top pushed away. But it stayed stuck together because it was right on top of it. Otherwise, it probably would have fallen apart like that. Because it would have pushed automatically, just like the one I just showed you. It would have done this at the top. You know, if it was laying on its side. Well, yeah, I don't know. You can see what it is. I don't know. I'm trying to make too many explanations for things, and it gets confusing, but that's what it is. That's the heart. And that's the heart in space. It's exactly the same. Identically the same. Bennu, and we have this, it costs over $1 billion. And they've got this stuff in their hand. It's muscle sarcomeres. It's crazy not to be able to really do research, because it just stops things, because they say, well, it's a heart. No, that's it. But that'll give us some more research to do, but it is a heart. If you can't stop and deal with reality, and nobody can anymore. I mean, really almost nobody. So we're in a world of hurt, my friends, when it comes to research. It's just unbelievable. Speaking of blood, this is Australia. It's like one big scab. The whole continent is just, it's just like one big bloody scab. It's unbelievable. And that's why they have so many opals here. Because opals form what is a lot of blood, because the blood has the transition metals. In the right conditions, they'll invade and they'll become absolutely stunning looking opals. You want to see a heart? This one here filled up with silicates, all right, clear, because there wasn't enough transition metal blood there. The blood drained out and silicates filled in, and they will, just like here. You see that? You see that black and red? I don't know if you can see that or not. You see the black and the red and the silicates in between? This was a heart. Anyway, this, there was no silicates here, so there's just all red blood running all over the place. See how cool this is? This is a heart. And this is from Australia, from the Yoa region, opals. And this, you see how this lining, the heart lining here, is a certain color, and the little heartstrings and so forth are a certain color, and the tubing is a different color, and they got all these different transition metals. Transition metals cause the colors, and the certain tissues want to become stable only by attaching to a certain one of these transition metals. You see all up in here? Look at this, all up in here. Look at that stuff. And this was together. Now this heart was laying like this. And you say, how do I know that? Well, all of these transition metals are heavier than the plasma, which is the blood. So they will drift to the bottom. Boom. So this was down. This, you can see, the plasma, there's no transition metals way up high in that. So this was up the top, laying like this, and all that stuff collected at the bottom. Now, I got another little tiny opal here to show you, which is right from in here. And they sectioned it off. Where did that go? See that? That's called a black opal. And the reason is this is in primarily, I think, vein blood with all the metals, because they call them a black opal. Blue is the color of blood. Now, and I'm not sure whether the blue stays or it turns black, but I see a lot of blue in here. I don't know. One of those things. But anyway, that's a heart, and here's what a regular heart looks like when it's cut across. It's the same thing. There's all the little heartstrings and the webbing and the ventricle walls and the aorta, and it breaks right there, right across there, right there. And you end up with 2 buckets of blood, and all the plumbing takes off. Now this one didn't do that. This one here didn't do that, because it washed all of those transition metals out, so there was no pressure to push it off, because that's where the pressure comes. It just pops it right off. So that's why this one did not pop off. Now, just to finish up here quickly with the hearts, this is Bennu, over $1 billion to get out there, way over that. And it is a heart. They have to come up and work with reality. That's what it is. And they even grabbed a chunk of it and came back. And here's the chunk they came back with. These are sarcomeres. That's a phosphate layer, phospholipid layer. Sarcomeres, phospholipid layer, another layer of sarcomeres. These are what the sarcomeres look like, very close up. They're these little blocks. And they pinch together when a muscle contracts. And in between every contraction layer, every sarcomere layer, is a layer of phosphates and phospholipids. And this is exactly what they found. And this is a heart here on Earth from a heart attack. And that's what the sarcomeres are. It's a heart. They went out and found a heart. And that's what it is. There they are. And here's what came back from Bennu. Now, I expect, hopefully I will hear from Trump or Musk or one of them, somebody, that's running this stuff, that they're spending billions and billions and billions of our dollars on. And Fermilab is way worse. We're wasting our money. Let me put it that way. I don't want to point fingers at anybody nasty anymore. I got nasty because they don't pay any attention. So I don't want to do that anymore. But we have to stop this. It's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous what they're doing to us. Okay, you know what? This started out as a ramble. It was going to be about Pliny the Elder and his discoveries of what it was called the Natural Histories. I think it was what his book was. A huge thing, covered everything, all anatomy, zoology, biology, plants, everything, anything. And rocks, of course, was the other thing. And all these strange creatures all around the world that were cataloged by the Roman invasion, conquest, whatever you want to call it. Wherever they went, they documented all the histories and whatever they could find and whatever they could see and whatever was there. Now, they're claiming a lot of what he said was just nonsense. Well, that might be. But I have found a lot of things that he said I can verify. There were giants, there were dragons, and who else knows what. But he documented, and he went into mineralogy and gems and all that stuff. That stuff I don't think he understood. He was just cataloging what their characteristics were. I understand them for their biological significance, which is a step above that, but it gets us to another point in history where we can look back and understand these things that were talked about, not as mythology, not as just jokes and things, scary things made up to scare kids or something. This was real stuff. And the Roman academics, let's call them, they were very, very accomplished at documenting very, very carefully what they did come across. Now, some of it, like they say, it was legendary and it was mythology and these people had these crazy stories. Well, now I'm finding out, no, not necessarily crazy. If you go back in the ancient texts, back long before Pliny, they talked of all of these things. And whether all of these crazy, crazy creatures were wiped out because they were crazy or they just died out or what happened, I don't know. But that was after the flood. The Romans were going in, that was long after the flood. So they were going in and people were telling them what they had in their history and their cultures and showing them things. And they actually talked about one time they invaded, I think it may have been, I can't remember where they invaded, but they came into this one town area and they said, this is our god that was the giant that ruled this country area. And they said, no, that's impossible. By this time, they didn't believe in giants. And they went out and dug it up. And the thing was, I don't know how big it was, but they said it was enormously giant, huge, probably hundreds of feet tall. And then they buried it back with great fanfare, and they celebrated it for these people to verify that it was true. Now, then of course the historians say, they just did that to make the people feel good. They didn't find anything there. They just lied about it just to make the people feel good. No. Everything has been so distorted by the historians. You got to start over. Think for yourself. All right, please think for yourself. We haven't heard anything about our ancient past that's really validated at this point, as far as I can determine. So I'm going to leave it at this for today, because it turned into a ramble about all kinds of things. But you guys know about the dragons, the dragon in the desert, Quetzalcoatl, Scorpzilla, All of them. The one coming up from South America now, I've looked at that, and I can pretty much validate that that comes way up this side of South America, and its guts are right in the middle. And you know, we got blood running everywhere around the world. As far as I could determine, there is absolutely nothing that exists that is not biology. And I'm talking about stuff coming through space as well. Just like Bennu, I showed you, here it is. It is a heart. So is Psyche. Well, not a heart, but Comet 67P is a hip joint. Umaru Maru is a finger. All of them. I can explain virtually all of them. You know, if they can give me the best shots of them, I can put the biology to it and the anatomy to it and cover it. I have meteorites here that I believe still have blood in them. One of them I just sent off to be, I sent off a specimen out of it to validate if it's human or not. And I did a spectacularly clean job of doing it, and it can taking a sample, and it can be done again because there's plenty of blood in it. And I have another one, a little meteorite that has blood in it. And if you say meteorites and iron meteorites don't have blood, well, you're missing, because they have blood in them. Iron meteorites, yes, iron meteorites have blood, the red and the black, right in the middle of them. All right, there's an iron meteorite. It's metal. They call them iron meteorites. They're not necessarily completely iron. All these different colors mean there's different metals in here. This is smelted, which means it melted. Blood is primarily iron. I mean, well, it's primarily iron, but it's completely saturated with metals. They're called transition metals, and they carry all of the products through your body using nucleophilic invasion and substitution. So it's primarily blood, metals. And as everything boils off, you end up with the metal congeals. This is also an iron meteorite, and I'm going to show you this in a microscope, because this is a lung. Of that, there is no question whatsoever. And it's an iron meteorite, but it's small enough that it didn't melt into a position like this one here, into just a ball of metal. This one still has its basic structure because this was small enough that it didn't have enough friction to completely melt. When I show you this in a microscope, you're going to see it's blow your mind. But there's your red blood, and there's the black. Here's the black vein, and here's the red artery in the middle of an iron meteorite. So explain that to me with your space stuff and geology or whatever you want to call it. Now, where do I show you this? This is a lung, as is this. All right, all those little holes are where the alveoli were. This one just leaked out because it was preserved in a manner where they just drained out. This, they exploded out coming through space. They cooked, and there was just enough heat to explode them out of their little cavities here. But it preserved most of the body, but there's so much metal. This is heavy, and there's so much metals in here that it just, all the other stuff vaporized, and you end up with this. All right, so we understand this, we understand this. Now let me show you a giant one that I had to really think this one over careful, and I think I got it figured out. This was the Willamette meteorite that they stole from the Native Americans, basically. It was one of their sacred objects. Now, this is a lung. It came through space and cooked, and it still has some blood in there. And again, this one just leaked out. This one here cooked, and it's like this, only this one here, everything smelted. Now, how could it stay intact? Coming through, they usually explode and blow up and go everywhere. This had to come in at a special angle at the night where there was darkness and there was no additional input of energy from the sun, and it must have come in with the rotation of the earth, so it came right down quickly through that layer that cooks everything up. That's the only thing I can think of, because this is unusual. This is unusual that would stay together. Very, very unusual. This one I'm going to show you in the microscope right now. check this out. You see right there? I'm going to focus in on that spot. You see? That's a blood vessel. It's still got blood in there. It's still got blood in there. Nobody pays attention to the details. It's amazing. I really can't believe that nobody understands this. I just can't believe it. It's impossible. Let me put it that way. It's impossible that nobody's seen this. Why it hasn't been, I don't know. Okay, my friends. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no possibility that this is not a heart. It is absolutely a heart. And there's a tube running out of it. That is not an impact crater. There's another tube. These colors are all the colors of the blood I just showed you. Now, what did they pick up on here? They penetrated into here. I'm not sure where they landed, but it doesn't matter. They picked up heart muscle. Sarcomeres. I showed you that. I've already shown you that, and I showed you all the architecture, and I showed you all that stuff is right here. These are the hearts. They break right off at that seam. I think I'm going over that extremely well. These are the sarcomeres of a heart, and this is what they pulled back from Bennu, sarcomeres of a heart. And there's layers between every layer of sarcomeres, which are the phosphate surprise they never expected. So at this point, I am going to show you my little meteorite. I put some water on here to let it soak in. Now here's where they landed up on Bennu. All right, point of impact. Now this is the colors of blood: the black, the red, and the yellow. That's blood. Those are the oxidation states of blood. And don't tell me the orders of CGI and all that stuff, please. I'm on a new unstressed program, so don't start with that stuff. Anyway, that's my unstressed. Now, this is the lung. I'm going to show you the exact same thing that you're seeing here. Now, they went down deep, grabbed a chunk of muscle, came back with it, and I showed you that. All right, so, and that's cost us $1.18 billion the last I checked. And that, I think it was in this was not recently, this was a while ago. So it could, who knows how much they spent so far. And it's been back on Earth for a year. They should have known what it is. They need a biologist, a chemist, an anatomist, and get them all together in the same room and say, okay, let's all talk about this. And it's done, it's over, case is closed. Okay, shocker du jour. That's where they landed up on Bennu. This in the microscope right there is my meteorite. And this right here is what my meteorite looks like. All right, now this is of course in the microscope. And this is my finger here, so that's, we're looking at this, it's a small meteorite. Now, it's dark right now, but you have to come down with the light so you can really see the depth of the colors. Now you can see that is about as red, deep red as you can get, which is blood. Now this black is the coating that wrapped around the lung, which is the pleura. The white stuff is the fabric. They call it plagioclase, and it coats anything, an organ that has to expand and contract. You need the plagioclase. It's like the fabric bag. Now, let's look at this thing a little closer. I can prove this is a lung, and I can prove it because of the latch on the lung. All right, you see that up there? All these little white fabrics? There's usually 100% saturated with them, but they burn off. They're cheap. Underneath, you end up with the fascia, in this case pleura, because it's on a lung, which is a little more dense. So, and it turns black because it's cooked. Now, let's see if we get any better detail here. These are just all where the alveoli were. They actually blew out because they boiled inside. This came through wet. These things in space, because this thing here is still saturated with blood. I did a catalase test on it, and there's a ton of catalase, a ton of enzyme in here, which is the, catalase. I put catalase in, hydrogen peroxide in there, this thing's going to just go brrr. I'm not going to do it again because I've already done it, and it does go brrr. All right, so it's a lung. All right, look carefully at this. This is a new discovery of a new human body part, which is this latch. This latch is completely separated than the rest of the fascia. It's a complete extra little organ. It has two little spots in the front that allow the fluids that reside in this new layer that they just announced in 2018, which is the interstitium fluid-filled highway. And in that fluid-filled highway, the two off-ramps and the on-ramps are coming right out of here. There's two little dots. Now, every body part has this. This is just a chunk of muscle, but it was attached somewhere in there to hold the fascia in position so they could flex and do all this stuff and come back. And that is the lock. I call it a spur lock. And that's the latch right there. And this flap comes down and transfers the fluids here. The lung that came through space has one of these as well. And here it is right here. That is it in the microscope. All right, people say, oh, it looks like it's the head of a snake or something coming down. That is the latch that I just showed you. Now I'm going to put a little water on there. And you're going to see something very cool here. You see how different that is than the rest of the material? It's a complete different biology part. This is brand new. This is unknown to medical science at this moment. It's on every single organ and so forth. Now, right at the very end down here, there's two little holes. Hard to see them. But they're right on this one, they're all on the same spot. They're right down at the very tip. When it dries up, you probably see it better. But then this latch comes back to where the real emplacement in is right here. That's where the real latch is. Let me move this down. I know I'm free-handing it. It's hard to lock it in. Let me just stop moving it and adjust. That's the tab right at the top. Just remember this. This little snake's head looking thing comes back and it comes together and bam, that's where this whole organ would have locked in. And this is from outer space. This is from outer space. You see the black and you see all the little white fibers? Well, let me show you something. I showed you the latch. Let's look down below here. All right, so you've seen that latch, and it's on every organ. It has the same one. It's called the spur lock. So you saw that latch. Here's another couple of lungs here. Here's the latch on this one. It's completely turned to. It's right down here. And this lung is now silicon, just like I showed you a silicon heart. The blood is very, very tenacious. This stays around for a long time. Now this is what that little heart, the little lung from space should have looked like, completely coated like that with white. But it cooks off. So we ended up with very little white and almost all black. All right, so that solves that situation. Now, what about the latch? Well, here's what the latch looks like, if I can find it. Oh, it's always trying to find something. I guess it's this one here. Yes, all right. Again, that's the latch. Just like this was a body part here and latched in to wherever it went to attach to. I don't know where it went, but and this is only because they've shown it because of this injury. And it's supposed to pull and pull, just like this is a pull. And it is the latch, which is down in here, makes it so that it won't rip out of the body. It might rip here, but the whole thing won't rip apart. Supposedly it says in the manual. But this is the part that keeps it from ripping apart, right here. This is the real anchor. All right, and then this flap comes across, and it meets up with the next body part, and they transfer fluids between the two of them. They interlock those latches. Okay, this is pretty obvious. This is that muscle with the latch. These are the two transfer spots where the fluids transfer. Now I'm going to back up to where the actual latch is. So that's the part right there that comes down to the next body part. Now everything latches together right here. That's the real lock. Alright, so that's the real lock. Let me focus in. All the fascia comes together right at that spot. Let me take it easy. Here we go. Put up some little more light. So this part comes across. This is the snap. It snaps it right into the body part. Then all the fascia coming back. You see all this heavy duty stuff? This is tough stuff. That's the stuff you spit out at the end of the chicken. A little chunk. You spit it out. And then it comes back like this. And then it all spreads out into that very thin, filmy fascia that coats everything. You see it back here? It just turns into that red that slippery skin. But right at the latch is where you get this really gnarly stuff right there. It's the end of a piece of chicken. Just think of the end of a piece of chicken where the two breasts meet, like right there. That's the part you don't eat. All right, this is pretty interesting. Don't miss January's rare planet alignments and dazzling meteor showers. Well, what does that mean? Well, do they have any relationship, this alignment and this meteor showers? I don't know. But I can tell you what, the meteor showers are likely somebody was exploded in space. And these are little bits and pieces of their knuckles and fingers and eyeballs and ears and everything else coming down at us. Just like the little lung I had. Or maybe it was a whole batch of creatures at one time. Because Mars got hit by Venus. And it actually tore right across Mars. It's wider than the United States. The Mars Marianas Valorous Trench, something like they call it. It was huge. Wider than the United States. And all that stuff was thrown into space. It's all floating around in there somewhere, because when it got whacked, it left. And most of it probably didn't come back. A lot of it fell back to Mars, maybe, but a lot of it just is roaming around, and we come through it every now and then, the debris. That's all I can tell you. That's what my thinking is. So keep your eye out for bodies in space. All right, I love you all. Roger, over and out.